Welcome back. Today we're going to analyze another ELA standard. This one is RI 7.8. It's when you trace and evaluate the argument in specific claims in a text, assessing whether the reasoning is sound and the evidence is relevant and sufficient to support the claim. Now, we're going to break this down to make it easier to understand what students have to be able to do. And it's a three-step process. The first step is right here in the first two lines. Trace and evaluate the argument in specific claims in a text. This is step one. So in step one, you have to be able to understand and follow what the author is trying to prove. The second step is in these next four lines right here. Assessing whether the reasoning is sound and evidence is relevant and sufficient to support a claim. To make this easier to understand, let's put it down here in step two. Step two is determine if the points made or the details, these are the details, are relevant or go along with what the author wants to prove. Now, to give you a metaphor to make this easier, think of it like court. The lawyers up there, they want to prove that a crime is committed. That's the first step. Prove that the crime is committed. They're going to give you a background information. They're going to give you a timeline of everything that happened. You have to be able to understand and follow what that lawyer is trying to prove, the crime that was committed. And then they're going to give you a bunch of points, a bunch of details. They're going to give you their evidence to try and support and prove that a crime was committed. This is the same idea that authors do in their writing. They're going to try and prove a point, and then they're going to give details to prove that their point is right. So those are our first two steps. The third step is a combination of the two. It's this whole thing right here. The third step is you have to decide, does the author prove their point? Does the author prove their point? And the only way that they can do that, again, is with the details as you follow along in the reading. Now, to help you understand this, we're going to do an assignment where you're going to make a point, and you're going to have to support that point with relevant details. And the hope is that once you do it and you see how that works, when I give you the article and I ask you to follow along in the article and pick out the sufficient details, it will make more sense. So, you're going to use this graphic organizer right here, and I'm going to zoom in so it makes it easier for you to see. You're going to use this graphic organizer. And I've given you the person already. The person that you're going to do is Frederick Douglass. And you're going to do the importance of Frederick Douglass and explain why Frederick Douglass was important to history in the Civil Rights era. Now, you're going to give 3 reasons why. I've given you 2 articles. One is a History.com article about Frederick Douglass. One is an excerpt from his autobiography that he wrote himself. And from those 2 things, you're going to find 3 reasons why he was important to history and the Civil Rights movement. So you're going to write those 3 reasons here. Then the support is your textual evidence. So support 1 and support 2 are going to come from the History.com article. You're going to find textual evidence that proves the first 2 reasons you gave why Frederick Douglass was important to history and civil rights. The third support is going to come from that primary source, the autobiography, his own words. And you're going to find the textual evidence to prove your third point. Down here in your conclusion, you're going to restate, not in the exact same words, but in another way, your opening statement, the first thing you said, which was that Frederick Douglass was important to history and civil rights because, and then the 3 reasons that you found. I have done an example with Martin Luther King. And the same idea I've given you, I've used a History.com article and a primary source written by Martin Luther King himself. So what I would put in this first box right here, Martin Luther King was important to history and the civil rights movement because, and I've given you 3 reasons. 1, he's the spokesperson of the civil rights movement. 2, he led the March on Washington. And 3, he was influential in nonviolent protests. And if you'll notice, I've numbered these because they're going to go along with my 3 supports, with the textual evidence that I'm going to find to prove these 3 things. So in support 1, and again, I used a History Channel article just like the Frederick Douglass article you have. According to HistoryChannel.com, Martin Luther King influenced future African American leaders through his words and wisdom. So I found the text evidence and the proof in the article. But I didn't just write it verbatim, word for word, like it is on the article. I took that information and I put it in my own words, but I still gave credit to HistoryChannel.com. Support 2 is going to go along with March on Washington. History Channel states Martin Luther King led a mass movement to Washington, D.C., culminating in his I Have a Dream speech. Again, I gave credit to HistoryChannel.com, and I reworded what they said. This is how you avoid plagiarism. Don't write it word for word. Take their information. They've done the work for you. Give them credit and reword it. This is the proof of my second point. My third support, again, comes from a speech that Martin Luther King gave. So it's a primary source, just like the autobiography that Frederick Douglass that you're going to read. In his own letter from Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King says it is wrong to use immoral means to obtain moral ends. Again, this is proof that he was influential in nonviolent protest. 3 supports for the 3 reasons why I said Martin Luther King was important to history and civil rights. In the conclusion, you're going to restate essentially what you said up here, just in a different way. Martin Luther King was influential to history and the civil rights movement because he was the figurehead of the movement, led the March on Washington, and suggested many successful nonviolent protests. And just like that, I have completed this graphic organizer using Martin Luther King. And I used a History.com article, just like you're going to use, and a primary source, just like you're going to use. So you're just going to do the exact same thing with Frederick Douglass. 3 reasons why, textual evidence to support it, and restate it. And then by doing it, hopefully you will better understand the steps that you have to do when you have to read. You're going to make a point and try to prove it. You have to support that point. If you have any questions, email me or put your questions on the discussion board, and I will answer them as quick as I can. Good luck. We're going to get through this together. Do the best you can. We're going to continue to work on this, and we're going to master this just like we've mastered everything else.